Is there anything that you should consider when deciding on your podcast name?
People are wilding in these internet streets, but this happened in my group before where I posted something about naming your podcast. And I was like, unless you're fucking Beyonce or Oprah, stop naming your podcast after yourself. Like, stop it. I had just wrote this post kind of ranty. You know, I can get a little ranty.
Yeah.
And someone in the comments is like, well, my podcast is named after me and I am doing pretty good. I got this and this downloads. I was like, all right. Okay. So disclaimer, I am very big, and I think this is important. I always say there's like there's no crying in baseball. There's like no rules in podcasting. Okay, let's do this first and foremost because people get so hung up. Take everything I say with a grain of salt, or take everything I say and then do what feels right to you, and try your best to try to take what is for you and what is not. So that's like my number one rule all the time, because there could be shit that works for you that I'm like, that shit sucks. And that's just how it is. Okay. Prove me wrong. I am here to be proven wrong. But I do what I want you to think about. And this is like the core of everything when you're starting your podcast. It's like, what is it that you truly desire from your podcast? So people start their podcasts for all different reasons. And this does tie back to the name, by the way. But people start their podcasts for all different reasons. And some people start it because it's just, I did a live on this yesterday. It's like this microphone and just like making love to it. It makes me feel so good when I'm talking in it. Like I could be having a fucked up day. And like, if I just come here and talk on my baby, it's like an outlet. Like you express yourself differently through audio, right? So you might just want to start a podcast to fuck around,
right?
And you want to be the Angie Jordan show and like knock yourself out. Okay. You don't care about what results you're getting. It's just a creative outlet. Fine. If you are starting a podcast and you are wanting to grow your business from your podcast, listen to Angie, listen to me. Okay. If you want to start your podcast and you're not selling shit and you're just trying to like get a bunch of people so that you can get sponsorships, maybe take some shit from me, and some shit might not apply to you. If you want to grow your business, you want to get more visibility in your business, you have a small to mid-sized audience, you need to name your podcast something that when the people who need to hear it, or your ideal clients, the people who you most want to work with, when they see your podcast, they can instantly identify with that is for them. Period. Or you can also name your podcast like something that goes along with your brand. So like if you have this group program and that's part of your brand and your podcast is an extension of it, cool. Name it that too, because that works with your brand and your brand recognition and all of that stuff. So that's okay too. But it's like, what are your goals? If it is like to attract people who have never fucking heard of you before, and I'm scrolling the podcast apps or I'm searching for whatever, and it helps you be more searchable too. So like if what your podcast is about is not even in your title, you're not going to be as searchable, and that's just facts. So it's like, what are the goals? And remember, this caveat is that the way you start out is not the way you're going to finish, period. So when you're starting out, it's like everybody wants to encompass everything. Like they're like, I want to talk about everything. I want to name it the Angie Jordan Show. I'm like, just cool down. Start out very like specific, name it something specific, talk about something specific, and you can always grow. You can change. Guess what, Brooke? You can change your fucking podcast name.
She says on podcast name number 3.
Exactly, right? Like, and that's why, did you hear what I said? You're going to change. Like it's going to, it's like inevitable. It is inevitable. You're going to fucking change. You're going to grow and evolve on the journey. What you need to do to get into the scene is like, be really something that's really specific, really visible. And then you can go from there. It doesn't have to be that. You can buy the angiejordanpodcast.com domain. Okay. And then you can like change it to that later on. Okay. I'm in support. Once you get some people listening, other than your mom, like change your name. Okay.
Right.
Anyway, that's just such a long-winded way for me to say that. But
at one point I thought about starting a limited series podcast that was like how to start a business you actually like. like 8 episodes. It's just like what I would teach in a webinar or something like that. Right.
But I like that.
And yeah. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to do that, why don't I just do that with my main podcast then? And so I changed it. Now, for me personally, I needed to just come up with some random ass name and just get started because I just needed to start. And I was going to sit there and I was going to like freak out over it for the next 3 years and never do it. And so I had to just start. And then I figured it out. But I think that what I'm hearing in what you're saying is like, or what I would say to sort of tie this back into what you're saying is it took me 3 years of figuring it out to get to a point where I was finally like, okay, I'm just going to like do the SEO friendly thing. And so if you're not going to listen to Angie, it's fine, but just know that it might take you 3 years to get there on your own. And that's cool too. And you're going to build a whole bunch of connections along the way and you're going to get a whole bunch of practice and it's fine. Like I tell people all the time, like it really doesn't fucking matter that much. Like just start doing it because then you're going to figure it out. And sometimes that's the right answer, but sometimes you're at a point where you're like, no, you know what? I'm not doing this just to get started. I'm doing this intentionally and with a strategy behind it. And if that's the case, then yeah, put what it's actually about in your title. I have finally started to start my podcast. And as I plan my first episodes, I'm realizing that I'm worried about talking about the same thing over and over again. But I also want to make sure that my episodes are relevant to my work. Any tips on planning episode topics and staying organized?
I love this question, like, because I get this a lot. For a lot of people, this is something that like holds them up from starting. And okay, so 2 things. Number 1, this again goes into that same mindset of, because PS, podcasting is a mind fuck for a lot of people, which I did not know until I started helping people do this. And people get stuck, people get in their head, they get like visibility blocks. Like, I'm like, wait, I gotta pull all my like life coaching skills out.
Oh, totally.
Yes. But anyway, so what's going on here is it's like wanting to think about, it's like trying to complete this picture before you get started. You want to know the end result. You want to know, like, it's like wanting to have this thing done and fully have your head wrapped around it and have this concrete thing and plan. And this is and it just is not that way. The nature of podcasting is that you will evolve. You, like we just talked about, you will change your name. You will talk about more shit, like, or different shit. You're going to pivot. That is just how it goes. Okay. So this idea that I have to have this like 8 million topics to talk about before I even start is ludicrous. Okay. So like it's fucking bananas. You don't have to have that. So what I do, a good way to do content creation, and this has really been a game changer for me, is thinking about my podcast in seasons. So because this solves the close the loop thing that you're trying to do, right? Like you, at least you can close one season loop at a time. Like let's bring it in a little bit and let's close one season loop at a time. This is how I teach because this is what the fuck I needed for myself. Like this is what I needed. And a lot of entrepreneurs need this too, because we like leaving something open, like it's like an energy like drain, or like you're not like, so sometimes people really struggle with that. So I like to plan out and think of everything in seasons. And so and every time I'm mapping out content with my clients, it's like, what is the intention and the goal behind this? So let's look at this season. What do we want people to understand? What do we want people to walk away from this season with? So I'll give you an example. My messaging is shifting just a tad, or I'm selling into a higher ticket offer. And I'm talking to people who are wanting to use podcasting to further their like thought leadership, grow their brand. They're already making money. So it's not like generally like my last season, I'm talking about how to make money from your business, from your podcast. Now I'm like talking to this person who is already making money in their business. So they're not doing it just to make money, but they like really believe in their impact, their
Mhm.
brilliance. They want to amplify their voice. They want to amplify their brand. They want to essentially create their own fucking stage, right? So like literally my title, so for my title for my season is create your own fucking stage.
Mm.
Nobody knows that but me. It's not like I'm going to have like season 2, create your own fucking stage. Like it's just in my head.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, create your fucking stage. What content in here goes with this, right?
Yeah.
So like I'm going to talk about now how to create content in a more thought leadership way, right? Not just like how to get people through your funnel, blah 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 blah, and talk really clinical about that.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about how having a podcast helps you get fucking book deals, how it helps you like increase your visibility. I'm going to have guests that have done that have used podcasting in that way to show you that that's possible for you, right? So I'm doing that this season because my goal is to show people how to build their own fucking stage with a podcast. So then the next season, when it's time to think about your next season, maybe I'm talking to like existing podcasters who have podcasts but are just really struggling to grow them.
Mhm.
So my goal of season 3 is, hey, let's talk to podcasters about how to grow their audience, how
Mhm.
what it looks like, what it's like such an elusive thing, to be honest. Like nobody knows how to grow your fucking podcast. Like they're like, okay, I'm talking, and content isn't the answer. More and more content is just not the answer. So anyway, so it's like that's the goal of that season. So breaking that down like that and giving yourself permission to not know what's coming next, because a lot of times
Yeah.
what will happen is, and I will do this with my clients, it's like we do a season and then we're like, okay, what felt good? What resonated with your audience? Let's look at the numbers. What got the most downloads? What are people listening to over and over? What are you feeling from feedback from your audience? Where should we go next?
Mhm.
So I think that is something that is really helpful. Also, you can create seasons and content like what you just said, like how you were just like, okay, I'm going to create this like really clinical how to, or
Mhm.
you can create something that's really around your offers. So
Mhm.
like if you have this mastermind and you get this one person in your head, like this is my dream client, what group of episodes can you say that is going to lead this person from thinking about the mastermind to knowing it's possible for them to wanting to join the mastermind? And then when it's mastermind time, every single time you could be resharing your episodes about your mastermind. So you can create it in that way also,
Yep.
which is really helpful. But I think the main thing is like, what is your goal? Come up with a goal, a thing, an idea over like, what's the overarching thing that you want people to leave away from that season? And you
Mhm.
never have to say that. You never have to be like, this season, I want you to no, you can build your own stage. It's literally for you so that in your head, you can fucking organize your shit and feel like you got that closed loop
Yep.
and you know what you're doing and it feels solid to you. And then what's also great about that is like, now you know I created season 3 all about XYZ. So then when people ask me questions or I have this content come up, I have my encyclopedia of episodes that I can now be using in other places and show people, like lead them back there, because I am very organized in how that I've done my content.
I really love this point about allowing yourself to not know what's going to be next, because what was coming to my mind as you were saying that was like, the ultimate goal for all of us, I think, is to be getting better at what we do and to be like figuring new things out. Like, oh, this is a better way that I can help people. Or actually, this is a thing that always comes up for people. And if we think about it this way, or like changing your own work, like getting better at your own work. And like, if you think that you're going to have all of your topics planned now, you're actually limiting yourself to what you know now. And that means that actually it's not going to get better.
You grow as you do this. You grow as and you learn. And so you are restricting yourself to like just what you know now. And so stop it.
Every single time that I was ever selling a program, what I would do is like, I would have like 8 weeks of episodes planned that were basically just walking people through the same exact stuff that was on my sales page. So like write the sales page content. And then I would just like chunk that out and kind of like make episodes where I'm not, obviously it's not all just me selling to you, but it's like digging into us, that kind of in the beginning of it, for example, like the mindset shift that people would need to make, and kind of digging into that further, and then slowly kind of leading them to a place where they're ready for the offer. And as you were just saying, and then now it's like email too that comes to people when they sign up for my email list is like, here's like my top 8 episodes on this thing. And it's a really valuable, entertaining sales page, basically. It's, and like, it just, I just never have to do it again. Every time that I go back and I'm like, oh, I have an episode on that. Cool. I can just like put that here and link to it. I'm like, I was so smart.
This is like something I'm screaming from the rooftops constantly, is social media and all the content that we have to create all the time. It's like bullshit. When you leverage this podcast content, which is what I love, like, listen, if I'm going to record this season all about thought leadership and all about, whatever, like every time I'm going to sell my VIP weekends, which are like super juicy and like I love them and I'm excited about them, and I haven't sold them yet, but like I'm selling them. And it's like every time I come around and I need to fill those spots, it's like I can go to my podcast episodes. I can point people on my list to these episodes. I can create a funnel around these episodes for people who are interested. Mm-hmm. I can pull my transcript from these episodes and I use fucking AI to write a blog post for them. Yeah. I can pull my transcript and I could use AI to write social media posts from them. That's just something that's so valuable about podcasting. I think a lot of people miss that. I'm just like, look, chick. And some people who have podcasts miss this. I'm like, chick, what you doing? You literally have a bajillion podcast episodes. You should not be creating original content on social media. You can, but you got a lot of shit that you can create from what you already got.
Okay, final question for you. And we had that you alluded to this question, so I'm very excited now to see how you're going to answer it. I just sunsetted my podcast, which I had for 3 years. And with this one, I'm kind of facing something new, because my other show was really like, I didn't care how big my audience was, because I was like, the people who are here, I have such a good conversion with the people who were listening to the show. Yeah. It just wasn't, my focus was never really like that downloads number. Mm-hmm. Now that I'm kind of focusing on reaching a broader audience, and the reason for that is because I'm not really thinking about like sponsors for the podcast, but I am thinking of sponsors for this platform that I'm creating, and like ads on the podcast could be like a cool little kind of bonus to that, because, anyways, I could go on about that. Best practices for consistent audience growth.
Number one, you have to have awareness around what you're tracking and understanding what is happening when people are coming to your podcast. So like, are people coming and how much are they listening to? Are people coming? Are your unique listeners growing every month? Mm-hmm. Or are they not? Or like, so if people aren't staying on your podcast, like, then we can assume your content sucks.
Right. Right.
Or like, so it's like, you have to be able to diagnose what is going on. And it's not just about creating more content. However, that does play a role. And so what I would say is the more content you have, it does help build. It does help. It does help. It's not the only factor. I think it's like the least factor, right? So I'd say a couple things. Number one, you need to know what you're tracking, and you need to have a system for actually tracking that. Mm-hmm. When are you tracking? How often are you? Once a month? Are you, quarterly, really digging into seeing like what's working, what's not working? Is this growing? Blah, 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 blah. Number two, you need to be consistently creating content. Like, you have to be consistently creating content, period. Like, this is like podcast 101. Can you grow without creating consistent content? Yeah. But like, is it helpful for your growth? Yes. So you should do that. The other thing I want you to consider, so number 3, you need to be leveraging your social media for your podcast. So that happens in ways where, how we were just talking about, creating your content based on your podcast episodes, right? Mm-hmm. So everything, if your podcast growth is like top of mind thing that you want to create, like your call to actions, your content, you should be saying, P.S. this, we talk about this more in depth on the podcast, like in this episode, whatever. So it's like you're giving bite-sized things, and all of your content is pointing back to your podcast episodes. Not all, but most of it should, right? So that you are letting people know that you have a podcast. Part of that is like finding platforms that are supporting that growth. If you're using social media, like you gotta use TikTok. Like it's beautiful for podcast growth, by the way. I'm not doing it, but it's not my goal.
As soon as you said that, I was like, shit, do I?
I'm not doing it because I don't have I mean, I'm like, I don't know. I think I like, it's like, I know I have like an influencer inside of me and I want to do it so bad. I didn't got it in me, but I got it in me. Like everybody should know me, but like, I can't do, get ready with me. Like get ready with me and like show you how I make my coffee and like show you how I do this. But like, I can't, but I want to, I do want to.
Yeah.
Like, and for those who do, like, bless you, because
I love the idea of it. But the second that I have to take out my camera while I'm doing the thing that I otherwise enjoy, I'm like, I actually just want to get ready and listen to music. I actually just want to make my damn coffee. I don't want to record it.
I'm telling you, but I would be golden if I could do this. But anyway, so thinking about those platforms.
Yeah.
I forget what number we're on. SEO. Huge thing. And that's long-term strategy. So SEO, every one of your podcast episodes should have a blog post attached to it. Like something I like to do also for SEO is just like what you were talking about with grouping your episodes, like with doing this like series are fucking awesome for podcasts, because what you can do is, so once you create the series of like how to blah, 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 you can create its own like blog post, like that's all together, like a landing page, right? Of like how to launch your podcast landing page. And inside that page, I've got like, there's 10 fucking podcast episodes that teach you step by step how to launch your podcast, but it's all on this page. Then it's linked to all the other pages of the individual episodes, which is like beautiful. SEO loves this. Like Google loves these pages.
That's
like
really,
this, right?
yeah, that's
got all these links. We got all these links in the show notes. Here's the guide, whatever, right? So that's a really great SEO strategy for your podcast, by the way. And I also love to share, to tell people when you're sharing your podcast on social media, like in your link in your bio, like share it by the learn how to start your podcast. Click on this and they land on your guide or they land on your series. And you could do this in like if you have a really old podcast, like people who have been podcasting for a long time, go through and create like a series of 3 things that's kind of like a training, because SEO loves that shit. And then if you like are really fucking nerdy or really like into it, create a YouTube video around those 3 things and then have those 3 episodes and that link to the more you can do those kinds of things with like your existing, like the better. And then the last thing I will say is meet people where they're listening. They listening on the podcast app. Okay. So you could seek out doing ads in other people's podcasts, doing swaps with other people. So like getting someone to play your trailer, getting someone to sponsor, like say this episode is sponsored by such and such, and you guys swap that. You guys shout each other out and get into each other's audience's ears, or you're doing, interviews, guest interviews. Like I would say guest interviews is like, it's really slow with growth. Like it depends on what the fuck show you're on. Like you ain't gonna see like huge impact unless you're on like a really big show. And then you might see some shit. Like I've been on like a show that's got like, that's pretty decent size. And I had a couple people reach out like to actually work with me from the podcast interview. But so I would say those would be the things, like if you could look for, and you could even run ads on, I mean, I run Facebook ads to my podcast consistently, like traffic ads, like $1 to $2 a day of like, hey, come and do this. Like I'll run those because like, I ain't got no shame in my game. I want people to come consistently. So I run traffic ads all the time. but also thinking about running ads on some of these other platforms, listening platforms. Like there's other, that's not Apple and not Spotify, where you could actually run ads on some of these platforms. So like those are some of the things that you can do, a combination of those things, whatever feels good to you. I love doing the swaps idea. You get in front of other people's audiences. Like if you can consistently, and I think the biggest thing about that is just being consistent and understanding what it's going to take to get there. You know, like it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
But if you have a consistent strategy where I'm like, you know what, I've got, 2 swaps a month that I'm doing with people. Like I've reached out, we're going to email each other's list. We're going to talk about each other. Like maybe we're doing an interview where we're both on each other's podcast. The goal is because you got to be intentional. We want them to come to our podcast. And so it's just like a matter of, it's not one magic bullet. It's a combination of these things. But I think the thing that you immediately need to do is get the fucking SEO set up in place, because that grows with time. And so get that shit. Like if you could do one thing right now, it's get that foundation set up where you're creating the episodes. You have your keywords with them. You're like, you're like making your blog posts with them. Get that shit set up, because create that strong foundation, because that's going to build over time, and then do some of these other strategies.
Yeah.
And another thing you could do is leverage your audience, leverage your community, talk about your mission. And you're really good at this. It's like, talk about your mission and get people on board with that. Do fun giveaways. Giveaways do really well for podcast growth. Get some fucking reviews on your podcast. Say, hey, I'm going to give this. I like to give away podcast, Mike. You could do it at any time. So like I could go do a giveaway now, and I like to do them at like the beginning of a new season. Maybe, you come on and be like, hey, come and review my podcast and you get entered in to win this podcast, Mike. You got people sharing your podcast. And then the other thing is, reviews, like reviews matter, because it's the only social proof when someone comes to your podcast. Like if there ain't no reviews on a podcast, no stars, no ratings, you think that no one is listening to it. And it's really stupid, but we are just like that as people. And if we see thousands of reviews, we think it's so good and popular. And so we got to listen too. So like that does help, like when somebody shows up there, it's just like when you got on your Instagram, you got 100 followers, people are gonna be like, meh. If you had 100,000, they're like, oh, this chick's important.
Yeah.
It's fucking stupid. But like, that's just the truth.
It is. And also when people ask me if I want to go on their podcast, I always go and I look at reviews and I'm like,
nobody's listening.
If you have one review, I'm like, if I don't really like you, like if I know you and I like it, yes, because I just want to hang out with you and talk to you. Like, I don't care. Fun. I'm like, this counts as work. Sure. Like, yes, I want to hang out with you and be on your podcast. And but like if it's somebody I don't even know and it's like, oh, you have like a review, I'm like, I don't know if I have the time to be on this show that no one's even going to listen to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love this so much. And the part that seems like it would be so obvious, and I'm so glad that you said it, is all of the different things that you're tracking to diagnose what the actual problem is, instead of just being like looking at downloads and being like frustrated that they're not going up.
Yeah. I mean, because downloads mean nothing, because people can, and I found this out the hard way, is that when someone follows your show, it automatically downloads episodes. Like that doesn't even mean they're fucking listening.
Yep.
Although the download numbers do help, they're not a good diagnostic tool.
Yep. Exactly.
To see what people are actually doing.
Exactly.
So they can, downloads make it look like there's more activity on your show, which is good for your show and makes it more visible, but it's not a good what is happening on my show. So like you need to look at like listens, unique listeners. I like to look at that, because that's like, how many actual people is that growing? Am I getting more of an audience, or the same people just listening over and over?
Yeah.
And time played, like average time that like people play the episodes. I think that's important too, because like if people are just like peacing out after 3 minutes of your episode, something ain't right.
Yep. Yep. And it's you. I'm just kidding.
And it's your content. It fucking sucks. Book a strategy call.
Yes, book a strategy call. No, but I love that. It's actually really, really helpful to hear you say that, because I'm like, oh, right. Okay, yeah. Because then you can kind of diagnose and get curious about it and not just be like, what do I do? And then you're frustrated because you feel like you're quote unquote trying everything and nothing's working.
Yeah.
Like,
and looking at which episodes people are actually listening to. Sometimes the shit that we're saying is not matching the people who we have. And that's another thing. It's like, are we actually attracting the right people to our podcast?
Right.
So if you do want to be talking about what you're talking about and the people aren't seeming to like it, then like maybe you're not positioned correctly. Maybe you need to change that name from the Angie Jordan Show to something else to attract the right people. So like, what is it that is going on? You have to be able to you got to be able to know in order to change that. And if you're really trying to grow, it's like, the other thing I would say is you just really have to have an intentional fucking strategy. Just decide on something and do it for 3 months and see what you're doing. Like, write the fucking shit down and say, I'm going to do 2 collabs a month. I'm going to have my blog post done. I'm going to do XYZ. Try it and see what's happening in 3 months.
What's your favorite platform to host your podcast on?
Captivate.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't ask me why.
Don't ask you why. Is that what you said? Okay. So
like, why? And I'm like, because I fucking like it. Okay.
Because you did and you like it. Yeah.
I do that for all my clients. But go ahead.
I recently ended up deciding to start this on Buzzsprouts. And the reason that I brought it up as you were talking was because I don't know if you are aware of this, but they now have, it's called Co-Host AI. And it's like $10 a month. And it's like you upload your episode and then it just like gives you a transcript, a blog post, title recommendations, like 5 social media posts or something like that. And you just go in and like, you obviously have to like edit it all. But I was like, yes, please. And I tested it out the other day. And yeah, so as you were talking
beautifully
about, like, all of the things to set up, I'm like, yes, because now I don't have to start from scratch with having blog posts and all that shit.
Yeah.
And I have someone who's really good at editing, because I'm not, because that's the thing. I'm dyslexic. You don't want me editing your shit. Like someone needs to edit my shit. I should not be editing. But anyways, I was just throwing it.
Well, that's awesome. I hadn't not heard that because I don't keep up with podcast news. I'm like the last one to fucking know shit. So thanks for letting me know. Sure. I know this fucking... I'm so unconventional in my life, in my business, but like,
love it.
Which I'm sure you love. I was like, that's a sheer fucking thing. But I am. And so I'm not like, I don't keep up with it, but that is awesome. And a lot of people do use Buzzsprout, and they actually do have a pretty decent community, their Facebook community. So like you can get question answer, like when it's not people boohooing crying over how their podcast isn't growing. It can be decent sometimes, because that's like the number one thing. It's like people just worried about growing their podcast. And back to the grow your podcast question.
Yeah.
Most people need to start with their fucking content, period.
Yeah.
And some people's is just fucking trash. I'm sorry. But some people are just not as interesting as they think that they are. Yeah. I hate to bust dreams like that, but sometimes you're just not that interesting.
Well, and also, at least in my experience, what I have found is that the more you're trying to focus on how to say something in the right way and have everything exactly planned and all that shit, the less interesting it becomes. Like, truly, if you gave less shits, it would be more entertaining for people to listen to it, in my experience. So chill out.
Exactly. That's like my favorite marketing strategy ever, is just be your fucking self.
Yeah. And I love it.
Say crazy shit. You want to know how to grow your business and your podcast? Say crazy shit.
Yeah. Okay? And if anyone wants permission to like work from a pool and like post pictures of themselves like out on a crazy night and like post videos of them playing pranks on their sister and shit, then just go follow Angie and then you'll get the permission to do that, because your social media is like
my
hilarious.
Fucking sister, my poor sister.
Well, Angie, this was awesome. Thank you so much. I know it's going to be super helpful for people, and people who are listening who have more questions about podcasting. They're like, you have a Facebook group, go into the Facebook group and ask some actual questions instead of complaining about the fact that Angie's promoting her shit, because
Stop
And then go
spamming,
observe the
Angie.
people who join Angie's Facebook group and then complain about her promoting her shit, like as though anyone forced them to be there. It's really entertaining.
It's entertaining. Or just go to my podcast that pays.